Thank you, Keith, for the nice words, and thank you, BODW, for inviting me for this session. I've been really looking forward to come here to Hong Kong and tell a little bit myself and what I do in Kontrapunkt. As you can see, it's all about type design, at least today. And just a few words about Kontrapunkt is a brand and design agency, and we work with, I'll just get this work, sorry. We work with type design, and we are about 65 professionals working in most of the world, from offices in Copenhagen and Tokyo. For myself, type design has always been the biggest challenge for some reason. I was actually graduating from the architecture school where I was taught type design, which is quite unusual to have that in an architecture school. But that's in Copenhagen, we actually have a small department that deals with type design in connection with building design. And that was my introduction to type and typeface design. And those of you who have dealt with that also knows that the more you get into it, the bigger it becomes. So I'm only just started, though I've been working with it for 35 years now. And I believe it's the same with most other art forms, that you never learn, but you're always on the move. And I should say, I think the youngsters would say that I'm an old-fashioned type designer. I believe this is me. But that's how I learned it, and that's how I like it, actually. Because I think when you design type, you have to have a very, or at least I have a very deep respect for the letter forms, and you can say the archetypes of the characters. Tell me one thing, is there an echo here? Because I can't hear myself speaking, so it's a little awkward. Is it okay? It's only me who feels strange. Well, anyway, I think the interesting thing here is what type actually can do to you, because as I say, type, it speaks to your subconscious. And what I mean about that is that when you read a text, you read some words that hopefully gives a meaning to you, but on top of that, the type tells a different story, or you can say a parallel story. So one thing is what you read, another thing is what the type actually tells you. And that's what I think is so strong and so powerful, that you can actually provoke some feelings or emotions through the type design. Emotions that are not, they're not said by words, but by form. And obviously, the way it can actually provoke your emotions is also why type is so strong in branding. Type has some abilities of being really durable over time. And most of the type we read today and we use today, it's designed maybe 300, 400, 500 years ago, and it's still as fresh as when it was designed. So this is not only about the form of the characters, but maybe more how it's put into context, and you can say how it's arranged. And that's also why most global brands today, they use word marks instead of symbol marks, because they are more durable over time. Let me just jump from here. I'll come back to this, but I'll just jump here and now we are at BODW, and BODW has appointed Denmark as their partner country this year. I think it's such a lovely opportunity for Denmark to actually be present here in Hong Kong and show what we do, of how we deal with design in our culture, in our society. And I have the huge privilege of being working with a Hong Kong design team. And for the last year, we have worked with a project here in Hong Kong, which is called Police Merit Quarters, or it was called Police Merit Quarters, and shortened to PMQ. I believe those of you from Hong Kong here are familiar with this project. Those of you who are not, I can tell that this is a fantastic initiative that has been made to actually develop an old site of 2 old building blocks that used to house married policemen, and to develop that into a creative hub and develop it into a place to create. So PMQ is now under restoration and led by the architect Billy Tam, and will open with a soft opening next year in 2013. It's too old. I believe actually it's one of the first, or at least maybe the only examples of real, you could say, funkis architecture in the middle of Hong Kong. It's, as I heard the other day, it's maybe the most expensive real estate in Hong Kong. One of the most expensive places in the world. And Kontrapunkt has been appointed together with the design company Cannon Lau to develop the brand identity for this place. We have spent almost a year in this collaboration, and besides a design team from Cannon Lau and from Kontrapunkt, we have had some students on board, and we had students from HKDI and from PolyU, from the Danish Design School and the Architecture School. So it was really, you could say, an experiment to actually make this group work together. And we have actually managed to I should say, to really have a good time together and made a great project in our own opinion. The concept we ended up with took its starting point in the lettering that we already had in the building, which is purely a stencil typeface. And we decided very early that we would like the brand to actually be on the move and to reflect that in this site, in PMQ, there will always be, PMQ would be, a place for designers, for photographers, for all kind of creative industries, for artisans, craftsmanships, and in the street level there will be shops where you could actually buy the products that were developed in the different tenants. And so it will always be a living and organic place that will always develop over time. So we decided that we would stay to the stencil type and make a brand that could actually move and change over time. So we constantly have new letter forms that would make up the wordmark of PMQ. So what's common to all these type forms is that they are all stencils and referring back to the historical letters in the site. And it could be horizontal, it could be vertical, and also we, of course, they folded out the identity to be shown on posters, communication, other posters like merchandise, bags for the shops, signage, and so on. So I think this project, I just show it here because it was just actually announced the day before yesterday. So it's very fresh and new, and I think also it's a good proof that this about appointing a partner country for this session here actually proves to work. And it also, I mean, that's what we all are interested in after we leave BODW, that we think what will actually come out of this. And this is at least one of the projects that will be ongoing, and a collaboration that will be going on from now on also. So thank you for that, and thank you, Freeman, for inviting us to this. Cut. Back to type design. Yes. I'd like to just go back to my own, to myself. And when I was a kid, I was growing up in a neighborhood just outside Copenhagen, and in this neighborhood there were some very specific road signs. It was only in this small commune we had these road signs. And during my preschool or upbringing, I was, always watching these signs and was thinking about this peculiar typeface they had. In fact, the whole sign was an excellent example of design, both the type and the sign itself. And later on, I found out that these street signs were designed by an old, actually, I would say the first Danish designer called Knud V. Angelhardt. And obviously he used the heart as his own signature. And that explains also the dot over the J, that it's a small red heart. And that was his way of putting his signature to his work. But I couldn't help also, of course, noticing the type itself. And to me, there was something very different with this type. As you can see, it's a typeface where the inner forms of the characters are as big as possible. And I always wondered why this inner form, especially in V, in uppercase N and M and so on, why they didn't end in a sharp angle, but it always ended in this round form. And yeah, this is actually the typeface as it looks in a digital version. And it's actually also the typeface that is used for the Danish logo for this event here. But if you look carefully at Angelhardt's drawings of this typeface, these are made back in 1920. And here you will see that he actually drew these open inner forms. So they were actually meant to be like that. And I found out that the reason he did it was that these letters on the signs, they were actually iron casted. And in order to make the letter release the mold, then you should definitely avoid the sharp angle. So he rounded all these inner forms. So it was easier for the iron to release the mold. But the interesting thing here is that this was actually not only because of that, it was also because it became sort of his trademark in his type design. So also he used the same trick or the same feature in all other of his letter or type designs. You can easily see some of his logos of the same time. He used the same feature. And this, I don't know, I mean, I have been traveling around the world for many years, and I tried to find out, is Denmark actually the only place that we have, or we deal with type in this way? And actually, I haven't been able to find anywhere else that you have this very different form language in the characters. And also, it explained to me that it was actually that Angelhardt, he was inspiring all the generations after him in Denmark, dealing with type design. These are some examples of some of his students and followers who actually worked with the inner forms in the same way as Angelhardt himself. This example is made by my old professor, and also he was very influenced, obviously, by Angelhardt. This is made in 1960, so looks very fresh and modern even today. And if you look also at the Danish license plate, also made by one of Angelhardt's admirers and students, you see the same feature. So this is just to say that it has really influenced a lot of the Danish type designers. And I can't help thinking, when you look at this order of, you can say, masters, starting with actually Bindesbøll, who was Angelhardt's teacher. All of these were educated and trained as architects, and somehow they ended up with being type designers. It's quite unusual. And maybe there could be something about that when you work with type design as an architect, you see the character not as a letter form, but as a symbol or as an object. And therefore, you deal with the form and the design in a different way. As Keith just said, it has also inspired myself, and I used, when I designed the type or the typeface for the Danish railways, I used the same feature with the open inner forms. And also, later on, I designed another typeface for the Danish pharmacies that were taking a starting point in the old pharmaceutical jars, where you have these very vertical inner forms also in the round letters. And it's a long story about these. But it's interesting that all over across Europe, you had the same style on these pharmaceutical jars, no matter if they came from Italy, Ireland, Norway, England, Britain, or Germany. So this inspired me to actually develop a pharmaceutical typeface, so to speak, and turn that into a modern typeface, as you can see here. And also, this typeface has the same feature. So it's not a concept, but it's more, you can say, a cultural influence that we experience. Noma is one of the famous restaurants in the world. It's actually been appointed as the world's best restaurant for the last 2 years, in 2011 and 12. And I have been very honored to actually develop, you can say, a visual identity for Noma. I wouldn't say it's a brand, because they would hate that word in Noma. But it's a visual identity based on a typeface that is just used to write their name. And the idea with Noma is that they have this reservoir concept, meaning that they only use ingredients in the food from the local areas around Denmark. And obviously this typeface is also taking its starting point in the same, you can say, in the same idea. Also using the same feature as seen before. I'm afraid I have to jump a little in this presentation. Some years ago, we did a project in Japan to develop a corporate sign system for Dai Nippon Printing, which is called DNP, a huge Japanese company. And all these signs were dual language, bilingual, Japanese-English. And therefore, we designed, you can say, a Latin typeface that was actually taking its form from the Japanese characters in order to create a coherent expression across the languages and across the different writings. And also the pictograms were designed like almost Japanese characters, Hanji characters. And this project actually led to the next project, which was a brand identity for a jewel company called Tasaki, where we took the opposite take, where we actually designed a Latin typeface inspired by the Japanese calligraphy. This is one of the huge jewel retailers in Japan, and also here we created a full type set to be used in all communication and of course for the word mark. I'm showing this because I think it's so interesting that, or at least this has, provoked this thinking about how can companies actually brand themselves in this globalization we experience. How can we actually create global brands across the different writings, from English to Chinese, Japanese? And there's so many problems doing that, obviously because it's almost impossible to design a Chinese typeface. So many characters, but of course you have some ways to get around that nowadays. But still, you can say from the form point of view, there are still some really open gaps to be closed here. Some companies, the biggest companies, they can deal with this. They know the problem and they know how to get around it. Others, they might not take that much care of it. And this not only goes for branding, it also goes for all bilingual communication that, in the West, we designers in the West, we don't know much about how to handle Eastern typefaces. And designers in Asia don't know much about how to handle Western typefaces. We haven't got the insights from both sides. And I think it's really a subject which is so, you can say, urgent and which has to be explored more into details. Therefore, I have taken this initiative to set up what I call Typefacia. Typefacia is a small research unit within Kontrapunkt that is exploring how to secure consistent typographic experiences across the different writings from west to east and opposite. And if some of you are interested, I would be very happy to hear from you, and if any one of you could actually be part of this project, I would love to have you on board. We need all the different experiences we can get, and we would be very happy to give you all of our knowledge on this. There was another project actually that also was leading me to this, and this was Carlsberg. I've been working with Carlsberg and the design for Carlsberg for 10 years, and in Kontrapunkt, we are doing most of their design across labeling, packaging, and actually we are controlling the Carlsberg brand all over the world. So we are sort of brand guardians for Carlsberg. And some years ago, I designed this typeface for the brand as a brand typeface. And it's a full character set in many weights. And also here, when Carlsberg is growing so fast, especially on the Russian market, we also designed this typeface in Cyrillic. And that, again, led me to this idea about how do we actually handle these things across the different writings. It's so difficult to deal with. So I hope still that we could gather all our mutual experiences, and this could be something that we could meet upon after this event here in BODW, that we actually create some collaborations on this matter. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Bo, for a really fascinating presentation. And Bo's presentation struck many chords with me personally, and I'm definitely the first one to sign up for your Type Asia. Can we have some questions? Open the floor for questions. Anyone? Yeah, this one there.
When did you feel as if it was the right time to start your own business and not work for someone else?
Sorry, couldn't hear that.
When did you know it was the right time to start your own business?
Your business?
To start your own business?
When is the right time to start your own business?
Yeah, your experience with that.
Good question. I can say from my point of view, I started because I didn't know what else to do. I was graduating in 1978, I think, 79. And at that time, there was a deep depression or recession in Denmark, and it was impossible to get any job. So I just started on my own. I didn't have a choice. But I would say, I never actually, to be honest, I never fancied that I should be on my own. But I believe, I mean, if I was graduating today, I would say I would only do it if I really, how can I say, if I really had something that I would say that I want to be myself. I want to decide myself on anything I'll do. And if you have that feeling inside you, then you should go by yourself, because in all jobs, if you're employed in any design agency, you will all know that. Then you are always on board a team, and you are always referring to a creative director or whatever, and it's limited the way you can influence projects like that. But, you know, I think the design profession has, at least in Denmark, always been characterized by small companies. Many designers, they just start for themselves. So many design companies are just one or two people working together, you know, and we have very few bigger design offices in Denmark. Though we have one of the biggest in the world, actually, Design It, who are also present here today. But otherwise, we are a small profession.
I think it takes a lot of courage to focus on type design, because it's seen as a very esoteric or a very subtle thing that people don't really notice. And I think Bruce Miles said, typography is an image you never see, and compared to other aspects of graphic design or communication design, it seems like something that's very, very little known and very difficult to explain to your clients.
Yes.
Would you agree?
Yes, certainly. But I would say, on the other hand, it's difficult to sell. But on the other hand, once it's sold, I would say that I believe most companies will regard a brand typeface as maybe the most important attribute to that brand, because it shows its value over time. And I mean, it means that a brand can be communicated through any message, and also that you don't have to apply your logo to everything. And in these dark markets times, it's a very efficient way of branding yourself.
I think we have time to take a few more questions. Yeah, this one there. There are two there.
Yeah. About Carlsberg, the logo just now you had shown, and the challenge what we have it to localize a brand for Asia. In the past I had seen one good example is Coca-Cola. There is a Coca-Cola written in Thai, Indonesian, even in Indian languages. In the beginning I thought that they might be diluting the brand, but over a period of time it became a collector's item, and now in Thailand people want to see Coca-Cola with a Thai brand, no more English font. So do you see Carlsberg changing in the future, changing to a local fonts?
You mean see Carlsberg changing to local fonts? Is that what you say? Oh yes. I mean,
just a thought. It's like because you're talking about challenges about the Carlsberg and how it's been written in the different languages.
Isn't there a Chinese version of Carlsberg?
I don't
no,
think so.
not yet. We are working on it.
Or somebody did it and you don't know about it.
But you see, I'm not sure this is answering your question, but I believe that, this about making coherences across the languages is, it's give and take, because if it would mean that the world would just be alike all over, everywhere, then it's really a backdraw. But I hope also that in my presentation I've shown that actually you can have a very local starting point and then fold that out, So it's not just a universal language that we create, which would be very boring and very dull. So I really hope that we can find all these local inspirations that could lead to something you can even spread out over, also outside your own area, local area. But I'm not sure I really understood your question, but I hope I answered it.
Okay, we'll take one more quick question, and then we have to go to the next speaker. Okay, maybe this one. Over there. A quick one.
Architect and graphic design background, and usually you show a lot of typefaces during the presentation. But I was wondering about the best example of your maximizing your talent and background using being an architect, architecture and graphic to make the successful branding. Can you share with us?
Yes. Yes, I actually, in the Royal Academy in Copenhagen, in the architecture school, as I said, at that time I was studying there, we had this design institute within the architecture school. And the design institute was made up of 3 departments, which was graphic design, industrial design, and furniture design. And The difference with this design education from other design education was that we always saw these design disciplines as architectural disciplines, meaning that we designed objects that were related somehow to buildings or other design disciplines like landscape design, urban planning, and so on. But if you have that take, it's different from, you can say, studying design at a purely design school, where you have another approach. We could be as valuable, but it's just a different way to enter this area. So I think that from my point of view, or for my sake, it has, I think, helped me that I've been through a normal architectural education, and on top of that has added the design. I think that has somehow influenced the way that at least I look at the work I do. And especially, as I said, with type and letter forms, I really believe that what you learn here is to see a letter not as a glyph or a letter form, but as an object or as an artifact almost. And I believe that will actually lead you to different solutions than the rest, or coming from design schools.
Thank you very much, Bo. Let's give a round of applause to Bo.
Thank you very much.